In March of 2021, my son received an assignment in his seventh grade English class in which he was asked to identify his privilege, view himself as an oppressor, and to deconstruct and dismantle what once was in order to move ahead, meaning America. And that's when I started to question what was really being taught in our schools.
Hi everyone, this is Veronica Kirilenko of the New American Magazine. Virginia's infamous Loudoun County School Board is having a special election for 2 seats just a week from today. Loudoun County schools have been the focal point of controversy in Virginia over the last 2 years, including 2 high-profile sexual assaults committed in the district schools, sexualized classroom lessons, and parent charges that the school system is teaching critical race theory. Today, I'm speaking with Tiffany Polifko, who is looking to win one of the seats to represent Broad Run District. Tiffany, welcome. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me, Veronica. It's a pleasure to be on with you.
Of course. Tiffany, please tell us about yourself and your motivation to fix something that looks to be beyond repair.
Yes. Well, first of all, I am the mother of 2 children in Loudoun County Public Schools. And my family actually relocated from Fauquier County in 2020 at the height of COVID. One of the primary reasons that we moved to Loudoun County was for the public schools. I actually am a product of public schools myself. I grew up in Fairfax County and I went through K to 12, had a great educational experience, and we wanted the same for our children. And that's why we came to Loudoun County. My primary motivation, I would say, what lit the spark in me as a parent and as someone who has a unique view of what's going on in our school system right now, because I have children, is that in March of 2021, my son received an assignment in his 7th grade English class in which he was asked to identify his privilege, view himself as an oppressor, and to deconstruct and dismantle what once was in order to move ahead, meaning America. And that's when I started to question what was really being taught in our schools, because I just couldn't understand how it would make sense for a 7th grade English class to be teaching information about systemic racism and oppression and privilege, which are tenets of critical race theory, to identify one race as inherently superior or inferior to another is just plain wrong. And that's where I began questioning. So as a parent, I looked into what was happening. I was seeking out help in the community. I didn't really know too many people in Loudoun County at that point because I was still a fairly new resident. But I was fortunate to come across a few parents groups. I came across Fight for Schools and also reached out to Parents Against Critical Theory and got almost immediate feedback from Parents Against Critical Theory. And I started to do my own research to find out, what is critical race theory? You know, what I had heard of it, but it came to my doorstep. And upon reaching out to my son's teacher, I was given feedback that Loudoun County Public Schools had embraced culturally responsive instruction. And I think a primary reason that some of these inappropriate topics were being taught in the classroom is because there was really never any operational definition formulated for what culturally responsive means. Sure, we all want children to understand cultural, to be empathetic to other cultures and to want to learn about other cultures and embrace other cultures. We have a very diverse school system here in Loudoun County, and we absolutely embrace that diversity. But when you go down a path of teaching children to either hate themselves or believe that they are victims because of their identity, that's anti-American, and it is against the values that we should be teaching children in school. And it's steering off of the path of what they should be learning, which is all of history, good, bad, and ugly, learning grammar and mechanics and writing, reading comprehension, math, science, the arts. That's what we need to be focusing on in our schools. And I believe we have taken a shift away from valuing meritocracy And school systems across this state have continued to lower the bar of achievement. And that really began years ago. This didn't start with COVID. That started probably back in 2015. And we're now seeing the results of taking the eye off the ball, which is educating our children and preparing them to be citizens of the future. They are the future of this country. And taxpayers are funding an incredible amount to this school system, and they should get a good return on investment, whether you're a parent, a grandparent, or just simply a taxpayer. Our schools exist to educate, and we need to make sure that's what we're focusing on.
Well, you said that the issue started way before COVID, and I think it started maybe somewhere around 1965, probably. I'd like to get your take on this broader yet critical issues related to education. According to the Cato Institute, since the institution of the Elementary and Secondary Education Act and Head Start in 1965 and until 2008, federal K-12 programs have cost taxpayers roughly $1.85 trillion. Yet school children's scholastic performance has not improved and even dropped in many categories. And education is a domain, I think you agree, that transcends all others. And generally speaking, what do you think would be a reasonable answer to this expensive failure?
Well, I think you brought up an excellent point talking about the 60s, because while I mentioned 2015 and I was referring to Virginia lowering the bar, this problem absolutely has been in place for decades. And we really saw this occurring at the university level first. So this was trickling down from the universities, the indoctrination of students, teaching them about, being dissatisfied with their country, teaching them about socialism, and really moving away from American exceptionalism. It really started there, and it just continued to trickle down from the universities to high school classrooms, to middle school classrooms. And now here we are teaching our youngest learners to be focused on their identity instead of who they are as people, instead of the content of their character. And when you move in that direction, we cannot expect to see excellence in education, because the focus has been removed from meritocracy, from achievement, from the equality of opportunity. And instead, our schools are focused on equity and equal outcomes. And that is, as I said previously, that's anti-American, and it's antithetical to our values in this country.
Why do you think public schools are often dubbed government schools by conservatives, one of the most prominent of them being President Donald Trump?
When you move away from the most local level, which would be, even at the state level, when you start expanding out into the federal level, you're going to have people passing policies and using money that they're not thinking as clearly about because it's not their own and it's not close to them. And so that's why I think we see this happening time and time again, because the focus is on something broader than our children. If we really, me running for school board here in Loudoun County, this is about as local as it gets when it comes to politics. And the reason I'm doing this is because I am a mother of 2 children. I'm a former special education teacher. I'm a board certified behavior analyst. And my motivation for running for school board is to return excellence in education. I am as close as you can possibly get to the most important stakeholders in our school system, which is our children. And when you look at the government level, when you take a bird's eye view, the 30,000-foot view, they're not motivated by the things that I'm motivated by as a parent, which is the education of my children.
Tiffany, how would you define the key reasons for public schools enrollment dropping nationwide, including in Loudoun County?
I believe one of the major factors in dropping enrollment is absolutely the COVID-19 pandemic. Parents were able, for the first time, many of them, to see what was really happening in the classroom, because as their jobs caused them to remain at home and work while their children were at home working on computers, they were able to take a peek inside classrooms. And a lot of the equity and social justice movement that we saw occurring in the classroom, even though it started years ago, I think it really snowballed during the 2020 year. And I believe that was sort of the catalyst for a lot of parents to stop and question and say, I'm sorry, why is my child learning about systemic oppression? Why is my child learning about white privilege? Why are we talking about white supremacy? Why are we talking about defunding police and police brutality and Black Lives Matter, when really I just want my child to learn how to comprehend what he or she is reading. I just want my child to be able to formulate a coherent 5-paragraph essay. We, as parents, saw the ball shift away from focusing on educating our kids and moving into more of a social justice warrior approach in many cases. And parents are, whether they whether they're able to put their children in private schools or not. It's certainly very expensive, but at the end of the day, we are funding about over $18,000 per pupil in Loudoun County to publicly educate our kids. And we are paying for that education. And so therefore, our children should receive a world-class education focused on the basics in instruction. And that cuts across the board. There is no party division when it comes to parents wanting their children to be educated. It doesn't matter if you're a Democrat, if you're a Republican, if you're an independent. The party of parents wants their children educated.
As reflected in annual reports of the National Assessment of Educational Progress, children do fail academically. And as you said, COVID contributed to that, I think, dramatically. Math and reading scores declined in Virginia, as they did around the country. What policies would you initiate to address this issue?
Well, I think we certainly need targeted intervention. I know right now we're looking in the state of Virginia at tutor.com, which may be a viable alternative to helping children recover some of their learning loss. But we see that children need in-person instruction. I think probably what we don't want to do is go back to more online instruction. And while it may be convenient for some, I just believe that targeted in-person instruction is really what we need to be focusing on. That should be the core of our mission. As a former special education teacher, I feel very strongly about ensuring that our teachers are equipped with the behavior skills training that they need to assist their students and to provide the best outcomes possible for them, not only academically, but also behaviorally. As a behavior analyst, I understand what it takes to provide the support needed for teachers. And unfortunately, in the terms of special education in Loudoun County alone, they have been losing teachers. And one of the reasons for that is because they are not properly training them and they are not giving them the support that they need. So it's not just targeted intervention. It's also making sure that our teachers have what they need in order to be successful. Because if they're not getting their needs met, they will leave the system. And we have seen a shortage of special education teachers alone, which has caused capping of individual education plan services for students with disabilities and special needs. And that is a travesty that these kids cannot get their services met. And I think that the school board here in Loudoun County could really benefit from someone with my unique skill set in the field of behavior analysis. And also, as a former special educator, I have been in this field for over 20 years. And we have to go back to focusing on the mission of educating our children. And that is what we, as a school board, our focus needs to be on the most important stakeholders in our schools, and that is children.
Tiffany, and how would you address the issue of inappropriate sexual content in school libraries?
I think we've gotten to this point, unfortunately, because policies have been developed and passed by this school board in which they have not operationally defined terms such as diverse. They have given their blessing for librarians to order diverse materials and have required them to do so. And unfortunately, the people that are ordering these books are most likely checking a box that says diverse. And we're seeing an influx of books in our libraries that are sexually explicit, that are highly inappropriate, that really shouldn't be in the faces of minors. And that, like I said, this has happened because there has been no operational definition of a term such as diverse. Diversity is great. As I said, we live in an extremely diverse community here, and I firmly believe we should be celebrating all cultures, and children deserve to see themselves in the books that they read and in the materials that they access for school. But what we do not need is to be providing taxpayer money to fund inappropriate books on our shelves. I am against book banning. I believe that if anybody wants to get one of those books for their children, if a parent wants to do that, that's their business. They can go do so at Barnes and Noble or Books A Million, or they can go to Costco or the local public library to receive those books on their time. But that we should not be requiring 80,000 plus children and their families to be funding those types of books in our schools. It's just inappropriate. And we can fix that problem by amending policies to make sure that we are operationally defining what is appropriate to be putting in our schools versus what is not.
Right. And until and if these grave issues with public schools are fixed, would you encourage parents to move their children to private schools or homeschool them?
You know, I would encourage parents to do what they think is best for their children. And that's what I will always do. As Loudoun County School Board member, I firmly believe in parents having the ultimate authority over what they do with their children. And there are many parents that are perfectly satisfied with where their children are and the placement that they're in public school. But I would encourage parents to do what they feel is best. If they're not satisfied with what their child is receiving in Loudoun County, then they should absolutely have every available opportunity to place their children in an environment where they will be educated to the level that their parents see fit. Fundamentally, parents have a right to the education, care, and upbringing of their children here in Virginia. It's part of the code of law. And I fully support parents making the best decision for their children on an individual level.
All right. To summarize all that was said, what are your visions for the school district 5 to 10 years from now? And what systemic changes will you work toward to achieve that vision?
Well, we need to get back to focusing on basics in education. As I said previously, I'd like kids to be able to learn in an environment free of identity politics. And we can do that by putting a hard stop to purchasing curriculum, allowing curriculum to come into our classrooms that rather than educate our students, politically indoctrinates them. So we've got to get back to focusing on that first. And I think if we can also return a vision of meritocracy to our schools, a rising tide lifts all boats. And if we're focusing on the basics in education and meritocracy and the equality of opportunity, raising the bar is what our children need to be successful and to be productive adults when they grow up. And that's our job. I also believe that we have to put the power back in the parents' hands when it comes to making their own decisions for their children and for sharing their own values with them, drawing a line between schools doing their job as educating children and parents doing their job parenting and guiding the morality of their children. And I think finally, taking care of teachers is a major priority for me and staff members. Because of my experience in the classroom, I have a unique ability to help in terms of providing proper support for teachers, developing ideas, as I said previously, in special education for behavior skills training, because teachers, if they are not receiving the support they need, and staff, if they're not getting what they need, they will leave the system. And we can't educate our children without teachers.
Tiffany, I would like to thank you so much for your time today. Please tell us how to connect with you and follow your campaign.
Thank you so much for your time, Veronica. I can be found at my website, tiffanyforbroadrun.com. I'm also on Twitter @TiffanyForBR and Facebook @Tiffany for Broad Run.
Thank you.